Donald Trump and his family members and backers are opening a new club in Washington. It's called the Executive Branch, and it is corruption on steroids. So if you are a multimillionaire or a billionaire, you have a new way that you can pay Donald Trump and his family members for the privilege of getting secret private access to the people that are regulating your industry or determining American foreign policy. You know, just because the corruption is playing out in public for everybody to see doesn't mean that it's not mass-scale corruption.
Hi again, everybody. It's now 5 o'clock in New York. During Donald Trump's first campaign, he ran on the slogan that he would drain the swamp in Washington, D.C. And yet, now 9 years later, all he's done is build a bigger swamp. As you just heard Senator Chris Murphy articulate, the latest development, the creation of a Trump-centered private club called Executive Branch, goes beyond normal levels of deal-making and skeeviness. It is, as he said, corruption on steroids. The senator saying that because, as the New York Times reports, the club costs as much as $500,000 to join. And although there are other private clubs in the nation's capital, quote, Executive Branch is an outlier because of the price of its access to the White House and its enrichment of the Trump family. Here's how it's described by one of its founding members, venture capitalist David Sachs, who is now currently serving as the administration's AI and crypto czar.
The clubs that exist in Washington today have been around for decades. They're kind of old and stuffy. To the extent there are Republican clubs, they tend to be like more Bush-era Republicans as opposed to Trump-era Republicans. So we wanted to create something new, hipper, and Trump-aligned. We want a place to go where you don't have to worry that the next person over at the bar is a fake news reporter or even a lobbyist or something like that who we don't know and we don't trust.
Got it.
So it's like any private club. You want to go somewhere that's highly curated.
Oh, there you have it. No fake news reporters, even though y'all can't stop calling them. The Executive Branch will be highly curated. A group of Trump sycophants and those willing to pay to be near them. Even Evan Osnos writes in The New Yorker of how this story, this single story, fits into what is described as Trump's politics of plunder. Quote, Donald Trump has sold influence so briskly that the political machinery cannot keep up. After he was offered a $400 million gift from the government of Qatar, an airplane so opulent that it was dubbed the Palace in the Sky, Dan Pfeiffer, a former White House communications director, called it, quote, the most brazenly corrupt move by any president in U.S. history, and it's not close. Less than a day later, a crypto venture owned by the Trump family auctioned off a dinner with the president at one of his golf clubs. Osnos explores what all of this means for our country's future. Quote, half a century after Trump started selling the illusion of exclusivity through casinos, mail-order steaks, and a bogus university, his family has finally discovered what people will pay for most exorbitantly, access to the top of the U.S. government. The open practice of crony capitalism is pushing America toward a reckoning between two paths, one in which oligarchy comes to be seen as normal and one in which it does not. That is a question we start the hour with some of our favorite reporters and friends. The aforementioned staff writer for The New Yorker, Evan Osnos, is here. He's the author of a tremendous forthcoming book, The Haves and the Have-Yachts, Dispatches on the Ultra-Rich. It's on my nightstand. It's fantastic. We'll talk about it more when it comes out next week, right? Also joining us is former Democratic Senator, MSNBC political analyst Claire McCaskill. And with me at the table for the hour, Democratic strategist, professor at Columbia University, MSNBC political analyst Basil Smikle. Evan, take us through, just center us in this moment first, but then explain why you think we're not reacting as other countries and other moments in our country that have thrust corruption into the limelight have made us react.
Yeah, Nicole, we're living in what can only be described as a politics of plunder because of the sheer flood of money that is swirling around the White House, around its occupant, its family members, and their allies and friends. And it takes all kinds of forms, some of which is so flamboyant and in our face that it almost exhausts the public. When you hear about the jet, you begin to wonder, does anybody out there even pay attention to this? But day in and day out in Washington, people who have been involved for years in the kind of, let's call it the normal pay-to-play politics, will tell you that this is completely outside of anything that a president has ever been involved in. The sheer monetization of the White House is taking all kinds of forms, one of which is that government affairs executives in town are now quite aware of the fact that if you want to get a one-on-one conversation with the president, the price tag is $5 million. That may go to MAGA Inc., the super PAC that is accumulating money for the midterms. But the truth is, as one executive put it to me, we have no idea where that money goes. We have no idea what happens, whether it could be used in favor of your interest or against you. And I think that what we're seeing now is just a level of utter and shameless transaction, a culture of excess and transaction that is now really swamping whatever remaining bulwarks against corruption still existed in law and culture. And our country, as a political culture, we are in a way almost maladapted to catch up to this. It has happened so fast over the course of the last few months and on such a scale that we don't even really have the ability to absorb it and to yet organize a response. But as I tell in this piece, the era of Donald Trump's monetization of the presidency is in fact galvanizing not only the oligarchs around him who will seek to profit from this, but also galvanizing their opposition, their critics. And that may well be a big feature of our politics in the months to come.
I mean, Evan, the books Clinton Cash were such forceful indictments of the Clintons, and they're all around corruption. The obsession on the right with Burisma is all about sort of a fabricated financial relationship between former President Biden's. I mean, and there was no there. I mean, there are no criminal prosecutions. There's no factual predicate for what became tidal waves of Republican rage and anger at two of the leading Democrats of the last decade. Why is there no, I mean, maybe you answered it already with the word shameless, but why is there no rejection of it on the right?
You're beginning to see some very telling indicators. When the Qatar jet became such an absolutely inescapable emblem of grotesque abuses of presidential power, there began to be rumblings from the most unlikely of people like, you name, there are some right-wing hosts who have actually come out and said, this makes me queasy. People like Laura Loomer. And now the reality is, though, and I think this is an essential takeaway for people, is that it takes time to accumulate the public recognition and outrage. And we've seen this in our own history. In the 19th century, Nicole, it took between the time that Mark Twain named the Gilded Age in 1873, it took years of building public awareness and public outrage and ultimately a movement building in order to organize the kinds of changes to law and politics that brought those kinds of abuses to an end. And so in a way, the lesson is, it is about sustained response from civil society, because you're not going to get it from the people in the president's camp.
So, Evan, do you view the response in the media, in the Democratic Party, and I won't even ask about the Republican Party, though, because we can't even name more than 2 or 3 people that rejected it. Is it healthy or is it anemic?
It is, at this point, I think we would all agree, it is anemic. It is not yet at the level of outrage that people would imagine. Look, if you had been dropped in from 1995 or 1955 into the politics of today in 2025, you would be utterly undone, bewildered by what it is that we're living through. But that is also what this process of public revelation is about. What we know from other, call them what they are, oligarchic experiences, is that it takes time for the public to register. A good example of this, one that scholars are pointing to, is the case of Ferdinand Marcos, believe it or not, in the Philippines in the 1970s and 80s. He had essentially collapsed the boundaries between his own personal assets and the assets of the public and the government. It became what scholars call a sultanistic oligarchy, in which he was rewarding his friends, rewarding members of his family, and eventually, it tripped a wire in what the public is willing to tolerate, and you got street protests. But it took investigative reporting, it took organization, and it took ultimately a sense that he had passed a threshold. And in 1986, he was out. So public pressure forces a regime that is abusing its power to either bargain with the public, to consent to reform, or ultimately to lose its stake in power. And that is where the role of the public, of investigative journalism, becomes essential to this process. But it doesn't happen overnight.